Morning, gentlemen. Just wanted to introduce the team here. So if one by one, you wouldn't mind just giving a little introduction, a little rundown of who you are, what you do.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Good morning, Ethan. I'm
Morning.
Aaron Reid. I'm Senior Application Engineer for Banjo Corporation. Been with the company for about 30 years, always carrying some sort of engineering title. And currently I work with a lot of our key customers to help them solve their problems.
I'm Jason Clouser. I'm Senior Technical Sales. I've been with Banjo a little over 26 years now. Currently in the tech sales role, have done outside sales, done key account, but pretty much helped day-to-day customers when they call in, have application issues or, warranty or anything like that.
Cool. And I'm Jake Danner. So I'm the territory sales manager that covers Wylie. So I cover kind of the whole south and west portions of the U.S. So basically Missouri down to Louisiana, everything over through California and kind of up the coast. So
Very cool. Well, Jake, we'll start with you. So how did you first kind of get connected with Banjo and kind of give us a little insight into what makes their products stand out in the field?
So about 3 years ago, roughly now, this November will be 3 years with Banjo for me. My previous company was downsizing and territories got cut. And so I found myself looking for a new opportunity. And so I kind of really just sat back and took a look at, what are some other industries that I really would like to get involved in. And for me, growing up in Kansas, while my family didn't specifically farm, they, I was around it, friends, families farmed, et cetera, et cetera. So, I had worked in my previous life with a few other ag dealers as well. So I went down the road, about 20 minutes down the road, to one of my old customers and just started taking a look around and, what brands were in there, what brands were being used on the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And I saw a lot of Banjo. And so I looked up Banjo, kind of what they were, who they were, et cetera. And, it became real clear real quick that Banjo was kind of the OEM choice, especially after, stopping at a couple different places to kind of compare and see what was out there. And they were really the choice of all the OEMs. And, you could really see through the research I did their quality of it. And then, so I started kind of seeing, okay, well, this might be a company I'm interested in. And just so happened through kind of family friend, had a connection with somebody that actually worked there. So was able to get my foot in the door for an interview. And here I am almost 3 years later now. So learning tons every single day, learn something new for sure. So, but Banjo, it's quality, and for me, if I'm gonna represent a brand, that's what's important to me personally, is that it's something quality, that's reputable. I don't want some knockoff brand of something that, I want to represent something that's quality that I can stand behind. So that's kind of what I found at Banjo. So
very, very good. Okay, so about Banjo, the Banjo is the home of the original yellow handle. Can any of you gentlemen kind of give me a kind of an origin story of where that came about?
Banjo was started in 1959 by Jack Canine, and it was originally called Terra Knife because some of Jack's friends, were farmers and they were breaking the current knife that was on there. So he went and designed a more robust knife. So that's why it was originally called Terra Knife. But as they grew and expanded and modernized, they added valves and couplings to the mix and they changed it to Terra Products and kept adding. And where the name comes from is Jack was an avid collector and player of banjos, and our handle looks like a banjo. So as they added all these new products, they wanted a new name, so they changed it to Banjo Liquid Handling Products. And Jack was still here when I started, and one of the first things he ever told me was we're never going to be the cheapest product in the market, but we're going to be the best that's in the market. So we became known as having great customer service, being innovative in the market. So one of our most innovative products is or revolutionized the industry is the manifold fitting line. So, you can eliminate threads, you can easily fix things out in the field, so it's less downtime. So we adapted that to our valves, our pumps, all of our fittings. And then once the OEMs got a hold of it and tried it, and the distributors tried it, the rest is history.
Yeah, to add to that, Ethan, so Jason mentioned that Jack's first product was a fertilizer knife. One of the things that Jack always insisted on was when we were developing a new product, he always wanted the new product to bring an innovation, to bring value to the market. He didn't want to have just a Me Too product. In fact, over the years, there's been several times where we considered making something, and when we got in and looked at it, we didn't feel there was anything that we could add to value to it, and so we would pass on it because we didn't want to be a Me Too. We wanted to bring innovation and bring value to the market, and so that's one of the reasons why Banjo has become the leader over the years.
Yes, sir. Well, I know you guys focus mostly on durability, chemical resistance, and things like that. What kind of pain points were the real problems, or what pain points were you trying to solve, or were they trying to solve right at the beginning?
Just they couldn't get the products. As the ag market kind of blew up, they were just having a hard time, because originally they were buying and selling. And then they finally said, hey, let's just buy a press and try it ourselves. And that was Jack's attitude was, hey, let's just give it a shot. And so they were trying to, as I said, the market was expanding. And so they were just trying to supply product. And once they started supplying it, then it was like, now you need to make it better. So these guys all came from, a farming background as well. So that they knew that, time is money. And, sometimes you only have a few weeks in the season. So after that, they really focused on strength and durability.
Yeah, I'd add to that again, obviously you don't want a leaky valve, you don't want to mess, you want something that's going to hold up. I think one of the things that's also interesting about the ag market is, farmers. They're not always easy on stuff. They sometimes you talk to a farmer and they say, yeah, I broke your handle, but it was probably because I kicked it with my boot. They don't always use the right practices, but they still expect things to hold up. And, I think that's one of the things that's helped is, developing that in product that will handle the situation. But the other side of it is the cost. You get into some other industries, aerospace, and you have products that are a lot more expensive, and yet farmers expect something that's economical that they can afford on the farm and still provide them that value. And so I think that's one of the big challenges in designing for the ag industry is being able to make something that's economical that farmers can afford.
So how do you combat? That brings up a question. How do you combat people who will kind of use it in a rough way, and you can't solve or predict those problems?
Aaron designs a lot of the stuff, so just kind of design as good as you can right out of the gate, and that's why our stuff is not the cheapest out there. We know these guys have a short window to get stuff done, and if you give them, if you're trying to make just a little extra money on our end, it's going to cost them money on their end. So that was Jack and Mike's, deal is, we're going to come out with the best we can right out of the gate. And, most ag guys, they want that. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know Aaron and his team does a ton of testing in the back. That was something when I came on board and was doing kind of my plant tour and kind of learning and going back there and kind of that testing room. It's pretty cool. They throw it through a lot of different tests and stuff to kind of make sure it's gonna function and work and it's durable. So Aaron can probably talk about that better than I can, but yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so obviously as we're designing things, we definitely consider the application to where it's going to go. We try to put it through a rigorous testing to be able to make sure that it's going to hold up in most situations. Nothing's foolproof, nothing's unbreakable, but we do the best we can.
So how do you determine what that testing process is?
Yeah, so a lot of times we go in and look at the market, look at the application. Obviously a lot of times our products used on sprayers, things bouncing through the field. So we look at, what kind of, maybe a vibration test or endurance test. A lot of times we also work with the major OEMs in the industry to see what their test standards are, to make sure that when we're doing our testing that it meets their requirements as well. And obviously there's some pretty good companies in the industry that have high standards that need to be met. So we make sure that we meet their standards as well as our own.
Very good. So speaking of, you guys have a new pump, I believe. It is the M350 pump.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Can either of you kind of get started on talking about kind of what that is and what it does?
The M350 is a total clean sheet design. We have our standard 3-inch series poly pump that's been around for a long time. Pardon me. And then we had a wet seal version of that pump, which we built here. It works great, but if you ever had to service it in the field, it was a little less than ideal to work on. No, when we decided to do a new one, we took the handcuffs off engineering and said, just design a new one. So the new M350 does about 450 gallons a minute if you feed it with 3-inch line. If you feed it with a 4-inch line, it goes all the way up to 515 gallons a minute. So that's a little over, 100 gallons per minute more than our standard pump. Less time filling means more time spraying and higher profits. It's physically bigger than a standard pump, which automatically gives you more flow. The current pumps that we make, and most of them in the industry, it's a volute that covers the impeller. Well, this new one, M350, has a diffuser, which is new. It's not new to the industry, but it's new to the ag market. And instead of having like one side port where the liquid kind of spins around and comes out, it's got all these diffusers which act like little mini volutes. That helps equalize the pressure around the seal. It makes the flow more efficient going out of the pump, which causes less vibrations in the pump, and that leads to higher flow rates and longer seal life.
So yeah, as we think about the M350 and we think about what we've already talked about with the fact that when we design a new product, we don't want just another me too, right? We want something that brings value to the industry, that brings more value for the customer, allows them to do their job more efficient. And we were able to do that with this M350 pump, like what Jason talked about. The diffuser is unique to the ag industry. It's not unique to pumps, but in the ag industry. And again, what Jason said there about going on and unhandcuffing, we wanted a clean slate. We wanted to make the best pump we could come up with. One of the other things that we did was, Jason had mentioned that this has a wet seal. We challenged the wet seal design. Traditionally, all the wet seals in our industry use what we would call opposing seals, where the seals act on the inner and outer seal, and that spring holds the inner seal closed, and that spring is what resists the pressure inside the pump. Well, what we did was created a tandem seal, so instead of being opposing, they work in tandem with each other, just kind of like a traditional single seal works. So what that does is that allows you to lower spring pressure. It also works with the pumping fluid pressure instead of against it. All of those things lead to less wear on the seal, longer seal life. The other thing that it does is it allows guys, obviously, like to blow the lines out to get that liquid out of the lines. On a traditional opposing seal, you have to watch that you don't blow that seal open. And with the tandem seal, that air pressure actually works with the seal to keep the seal closed, so you don't have to worry about damaging those seals. And of course, all that leads to a longer running pump, less maintenance, more field time, less time in the shop.
Yep. I actually have a little video I can show Ethan that kind of shows that. Let me share my screen real quick. So this is showing the seal that Aaron was talking about. So just pretty short and simple, but you can kind of see the breakout of that, and kind of shows that seal and how that's designed with that kind of tandem stacked type design. And with it too, you know, they were talking about the diffuser and that, and kind of how that works. So here's kind of a little simulation of what that looks like, you know, when stuff's flowing through it. So that's kind of give you an idea what that looks like anyway. And you know, from my side, customers, you know, are really starting to adopt that, and just seeing more and more customers switch over to it. You know, so from my side, you know, from a sales and market kind of standpoint, those that have made the switch over are pretty consistently saying they're saving time dealing with a lot less downtime issues because it is built so well. You know, with that patented wet seal design, it gives them, you know, the confidence of knowing that if something does go wrong, and they happen to like run it dry, let's say, with the design of it, we're not going to burn out those seals like you would in some other traditional type designs and such. And we're seeing more and more customers these days move from 2-inch setups to 3-inch setups, especially out here in the kind of central United States, Midwest, etc. You know, 2-inch has always kind of been king for a long time, but it's starting to see more and more 3-inch out there, and guys wanting, you know, bigger and faster. You know, they don't want to wait to fill something, so they want to do it as fast as they can, but and efficiently as they can. So you know, time is money, and that's what the M350 does, is saves you both. So comes all, you know, kind of pre-assembled, ready to rock and roll. So if you have you know, 13 horse Honda sitting there already, you know, you can get the pump only and take it home, mount it right up to that, and go. You know, you can be off and running and switched out in a hurry. So, but we also have pump and motor combos also. So we have, you know, we'll have gas engines, electric, hydraulic, etc. So we have multiple different engine or power source combinations. So just depending on, you know, what the customer's looking for.
So on the technical side, it sounds like it's definitely a much better system. How does this help with it? You did mention that it saves money. So how does that apply practically? I mean, if everybody's kind of switching from a 2-inch to a 3-inch, what about the guys still using a 2-inch? Is there a transition process? Is it going to be a little more expensive to switch to a 3-inch, or?
Yeah, the M350 is a little bit more expensive, but you know, you're going from, say, our standard 2-inch poly pump does 195 gallons a minute. This one does 450. So you're getting 250 gallons a minute more. So, you know, you add that up over the entire spraying season, you know, that's a ton of time that they're spraying and not sitting around filling. So like they said, everybody's starting to switch to the 3-inch. You don't see as much 2-inch, but once you show them that number, you know, it's double what they're used to. Then I think it's a pretty easy sell. And you know, they have to make that, you know, that payment one time, and then they have it for the rest of their life. One thing we didn't mention on on the M350, our pump onlys come fully assembled now. Whereas before you had to take our standard pump only, you had to have a motor or a shaft to build around. Now, the M350 PO, we build it here, we pressure check it here, so we know everything's good when it leaves. So all you got to do when you get it is you take it, you slide it on the shaft of your motor, you'll put 4 bolts in, you'll tighten the clamp down, and there's a little yellow shim, you pull it out. So, 5-10 minutes, you could have your pump up and ready to go. Obviously, you have to fill the chamber with water and antifreeze. It doesn't come with that. We have had a few people that haven't done that, so it doesn't work real well if you don't put that in there, but it's so much easier to work on and put together, obviously. And so it's once you show people that too, it's a little easier to sell. If they burn up a pump they currently have, they can just take this one, and like I said, in 5 or 10 minutes, they've got a new pump that can outperform what they just took off.
Yep. And most guys are, when they switch to this, they burn out their other pump or they broke something. They're have some reason that they are upgrading their system or changing out their system. So, they're really going from, basically, I'm going to go ahead and have this replacement cost. Well, I can just spend this a little bit more and get this much better performance and ultimately save myself down the road, as a whole. So.
Absolutely. So you guys also have another product series that seems to do really well, and that's the DryMate, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so kind of give me an idea of what that series is and what it does and how it benefits.
Well, the DryMate is it's not new to us. There's been a lot of dry disconnects out there in the market, but they're more like a hydraulic style where you have 2 pistons that come in and kind of kiss each other and push out of the way, and then it allows the flow. They work, but it's really restrictive, and if you have really gummy material, it kind of gets on the spring on the backside and kind of causes some issues. Well, Aaron came up with this DryMate design, where basically it's like our 2 ball valves, and they butt up together. And some DryMates use a similar cam arm as our regular cam lever couplings that everybody's used to, while others use these clamp arms, and Aaron will go into better detail on that here in a minute. The DryMate, when you put it together and you open up the handles, it actually locks those arms, so you cannot physically open or disconnect them from each other while there's flow going through it. So there's no chance of you getting sprayed. Well, when you're done and you shut the valve handles, it unlocks the arms so you can disconnect them. Well, then it locks the handles so you can't open up the pieces individually from each other. So it's another safety, so you don't get any material on you. Whereas a traditional cam lever couplings, on a hose, you basically have to blow the whole hose out to make sure you don't get any chemical all over you. They're not a matched set, so you can buy like 1 male, put it on your tender truck, and then if you're servicing 2 or 3 planters or 2 or 3 sprayers, that 1 male will hook up to all those different females. So it really cuts down the cost. You don't have to buy 5 sets when you only need 1 male. And they come with a plug and a cap, so when they're not together, you can cap off the male and plug the female, so that way dirt and grime don't get on the seals and tear things up.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Ethan, obviously the big advantage of the DryMate is that when you do need to make a disconnection, you're not spilling liquid everywhere. When you separate the 2 halves, there's, depending on the size, anywhere from 1 to 2 milliliters up to 6 or 8 milliliters, again, depending on size. But, where you're dealing with either a hazardous chemical that's not necessarily the safest chemical to be around, or maybe it's an expensive chemical that you don't want to waste, or maybe it's just you don't want to make a mess wherever you're making your disconnect. That's where this product really shines. It's where you want to prevent that spillage for multiple reasons. One of the things that Jason had lured to earlier, that one of the things that makes the DryMate so nice is that it is like our valves, unrestricted flow, just like our cam locks. you get good flow through it, but then the advantage is when you close it, you don't get that spillage. Or like even if you use a cam lock and put a valve behind it, the amount of fluid that's trapped in the cam lock connection itself is again dependent on size, several cups of fluid that you can't stop with the valve. So this product really reduces the amount of spillage when you're making those disconnects.
Yeah. I'll share a little video that we have that the team did quite a while ago. I kind of fast forwarded through the first part, so you can see here, you can kind of see the difference in the spillage. So when he opens up kind of your traditional setup there, some similar what you would have been using in the past, you know, you can see how much spills there. It's quite a lot. So, you know, and then he'll switch over here to the DryMate series. And I believe he's using 2-inch on this setup here. So you can see the DryMate here, the two different handles. So when he opens that up, you can see that little lever there lock into place. Right there, that lever will lock into place. When you open up, you see there's no real spillage there. So it really saves you a lot in the long run. You know, chemicals are not getting cheaper these days, you know, and so there's a lot of different ones out there. So, you know, just that little bit of a difference in there, you know, about 15 or 16 times you do that disconnect, it'll, you know, it'll save you about a gallon. So, you know, how many times are you filling up that sprayer in a day? So it really makes a difference in that. So, you know, saving a gallon, you know, potentially a day or every other day, that adds up over the course of a year, depending on how many acres you're doing, you know, and it's not just that year, it's how many, you know, how long is this thing gonna last you as well. So makes a big difference in there performance wise. And so it's been a really good product. Once people make the switch over, they really like the product. So, you know, getting the product out there and in front of more folks is definitely the key. But once people do it, you know, they never go back.
Absolutely. So looking at this, I mean, I can definitely see the practical uses, especially like you said, Aaron, you know, the hazardous chemical, not getting it on you. Of course, you would probably be using PPE anyway. But yes, reducing chemical costs and things of that nature, I can see the practical use. A gallon's a lot of money when you really boil it down to the logistics. So why not implement the DryMate as a standard practice across all pumps? Why specialize it?
We've worked with some guys, you know, some of the OEMs, we've tried to get them to add it to the, you know, the planters, to the sprayers and things like that. But it comes down to, you know, they're counting pennies, and, you know, they're not looking at, like we said earlier, you know, the cost of the chemicals is definitely going to save them. It's, like I said, once people see it, they love it. They have they want to use it. And it's just getting them over the hump to actually try it. And once they do, they see the benefits.
And so, you know, ultimately it's still up to the individual user to decide how they want to run their farm, how they want to manage things. And so we're giving them the options, the tools, trying to educate them to help them make the best decision for their farm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody does the same thing in their own way, if you will. So they, you know, every farm's different. You know, Farmer Bob on this side could do it one way. Farmer Joe on this side could do it, you know, accomplishing the same thing in a completely different way. So everybody has their preferences and choices. And we're starting to see more people take advantage of these. You know, some OEMs that are starting to spec it into different things. But ultimately, you know, it's up to that end user on it. You know, they're really the ones that are going to be, you know, saving the long-term money using it and the safety side of it, so that it's really kind of ultimately their decision on that. So of how they want their unit designed and if they want to incorporate the DryMate or not, so I mean, and ultimately it's going to save them money long term, especially with that chemical spillage. I mean, how many times did you spill chemicals and ruin that pair of boots? And how many pair of boots do you want to buy in a year? So
Yes,
those
sir.
aren't cheaper either.
No, they are not. They just keep going up, don't they? So from an engineering standpoint, is there a way that you could make it universal but not increase the cost?
What do you mean by universal?
So creating the DryMate and reduce or almost eliminating the spillage, but without adding extra parts or things like that. That way you're not increasing the cost, and basically getting the idea of you could make it more of a universal thing and showing it, yes, but then you're not saying, hey, this is actually going to cost a lot more to implement this. Instead, you're saying, this isn't going to spill at all, and it's just industry standard now.
Yep. So that kind of leads to an interesting thought. So in the last year to 2 years, Banjo has brought out a new product that we call the DryFit that is very similar in function to the DryMate. In fact, if you're familiar with, we've been talking about cam lever couplings. So if you picture a 2-inch cam lever coupling, and then Banjo makes the union valve series as well. Well, what we did was we basically took part of the 2-inch coupling series and married it up with a 1-inch union valve and created what we call the DryFit. And it is basically the little brother to the DryMate. And it essentially doesn't have all of the locking features that Jason was talking about earlier, all of the handle interlocks to prevent the handles from turning when it's disconnected and preventing it from being disconnected when the handles are open. But what it does is it still has the unrestricted flow. It still gives you very low fluid spillage when you disconnect it. And so it's kind of what you're talking about. It's a lower cost solution without all the safety interlocks. Banjo currently offers that in a 1-inch size, 1-inch ported size with 1-inch threads. Works really well on like the tote tanks, the chemical distribution, like on the nurse wagons. It's a nice product for that application, or anywhere where you want 1-inch flow and low spillage when you make the disconnects.
Yeah, there's a picture of that. So you can see the two sides there. When we're at trade shows and such, this is something we have there, along with the DryMate and other stuff as well. But once you show people this, they really do like it. Very, very simplified version of the DryMate. But they really do like it. So, but like Aaron said, currently it's in a 1-inch size as a whole. But the female side here, the D, it does hook up to a 2-inch cam fitting. So, if you were doing something, you were just going to rinse out with some water or do something like that, you could hook that up to a 2-inch cam fitting and run some water through it just to kind of rinse out, or whatever you may need to do is there, or use the cap in there, also the plug to kind of keep that seal nice and clean. Well, that's kind of a picture of it and that, so I'll give you an idea of what we're talking about.
That's definitely very neat. Are there plans to make it in a 2 and a 3-inch, or would it at that point just be a DryMate?
Yeah, so there is on the design table a 1.5-inch ported series. So like we said, we took the 2-inch cam lock and used the 1-inch union valve. So you can take a 2.5-inch cam lock with an 1.5-inch union valve, and then you can use the 3-inch cam lock with a 2-inch union valve. So those are in our design funnel. It's just a matter of engineering resources and timing to get the products developed and launched.
Awesome. Well, moving forward a little bit on some of the industry trends. Is there some industry trends that you guys are watching a little more closely at the current moment?
So I would say I know that obviously the drone spraying is definitely something that's revolutionary right now in the ag industry, and how that affects things. As we watch, how that progresses with the size of drones getting bigger, and potentially replacing some of the more traditional spraying. That's definitely something I think to watch in the market. The other one is, of course, the autonomous farming. There's several different companies that are using and creating autonomous vehicles, and so watching what those industries do, and how that affects products. Obviously the drones are spraying a lot less. Their load capacity is a lot smaller, so fittings have to be smaller, more lightweight, because every ounce that you put onto the drone is less that they capacity that they can carry. So those are two that I know we've been watching. Of course, always the regulations in chemicals, and what can be sprayed, and spray rates and drifts and all those sorts of things. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening in the industry that's worthy of keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. I've actually just watched a video on the drone spraying systems, and it's definitely interesting to see. Those drones are massive, massive.
Yeah.
But is that an industry that you guys could see kind of taking off a little bit, or is it still kind of in its development stage?
My opinion, it's still early in development. I think there's still a lot of regulations around it. I think it's going to be interesting to see. There's some obvious advantages to drone spraying especially when you start looking at the fungicides late season. The fact that you can get so close to the crop as you're spraying, and of course you're not driving through it like you would with the sprayer. So you don't get the crop damage from driving through it, but yet you still get low. They've also done some studies where just the action of the wind movement on the plant itself allows the chemical to get down in the plant better and actually work better. So I think it's going to be a balance of, once you get to the point where, like when it early started, the regulations were is one operator per drone. And as they start to get to the point where you can do 2 or 3, maybe where you can carry more. I know I've talked to some different applicators that, they typically load up and can do about 2 acres per fill. So that's a lot of back and forth between the field and the fill tank. If you start getting a little bit bigger to where you can expand that range and make it a little bit better. I don't see it going away anytime soon, and it'll be just a matter of how far can they develop it and how far can they go with I'll say permissions to be able to operate.
Absolutely. So we have the M230 and we have the DryMate. Is there any new adaptations or anything in the funnel that you guys are working on currently?
Well, I will say there are definitely things that we're working on. There's a few projects that we have going that we're not able to talk about, but we definitely have some things that we're working on. One of the things that if you look over my shoulder, you can see some tall pipes in the background. We've recently come out with long couplings. So we currently have available in the M300 series a 27-inch, a 32-inch, and a 38-inch. Where they really shine is when you're working on your nurse wagons, where you have shorter runs of hose. Everybody hates putting together 3-inch hose. It's hard to get the barbs in. You go get your lube out, you try to fight the things. You stop and think about it. You've got the section of hose, you've got 2 fittings, you've probably got 4 clamps. You got to put all that together. And then, of course, it's not quite straight because the hose has always got a kink in it. And then you got to get that connected in. So this gives you something that eliminates the clamps, it eliminates the hose barb clamps. You don't have to put that all together. We haven't done the testing to show exactly what the flow gain is, but if you think about going through a 3-inch hose barb, that necks down to 2.5 inch. Whereas with these pipes, you maintain that 3-inch all the way through, so you don't get that flow restriction. So we're pretty excited about that new product. We're working on some other different pieces to go along with that to help plumbing trailers. So you'll see more of that coming over the next few months. So pretty excited about some new things that we're bringing out there.
And that's something too, you know, we love to hear feedback, you know, from your customers. You know, we work through distributors like Wylie. So, you know, if there's something you or your customers, you know, are seeing that they want, you know, something that, you know, we're not making, hey, why doesn't Banjo make this? They should look into this. You know, we love that feedback. So anytime we can get it. So definitely have anybody on your team, or if there's any customers, you know, reach out to the Wylie guys or to us at Banjo, and, you know, let us know. So that's the only way we're going to hear about it a lot of times is, you know, somebody's willing to actually speak up and let us know. So
a longer handle or a shorter handle or handle size, does that actually make any difference in any part of the pump or flow system?
Yeah, the longer the handle, you know, the longer the lever, so it's easier to turn. So on some of the bigger valves, you know, you want a little longer handle because, you know, you got that big 3-inch ball, you know, it's being held in place, you know, by those Teflon seats, bolts, everything. So you want that tight compression to get a seal. So you can't put too short of a handle on there. But when you get down to some of the smaller ones, like the OEMs like to hide the valve behind a metal plate. So we do offer like a T-handle on some of ours. So it's a much shorter, it's probably less than half the size of a regular one, but you really got to turn those. But yeah, if you have the space, you know, a longer handle is always better. Just it's easier to turn. It's easier on you. It's easier on the valve, easier on stem.
Yeah, Banjo's like a gigantic kind of Lego set. Essentially, we have some combination of stuff that we could probably make work for whatever your application is or your need is. I mean, for example, we even have a little handle riser. So I know I've seen some OEMs use it going through a piece of sheet metal, like through the fender on some, so that handle's outside, but the valve's hidden underneath, for example. So we have tons of different combinations to make something work. So it's just a matter of, you know, figuring out what that is. That's why you see a lot of guys go into stores like yours that carry a lot of Banjo, and literally they start assembling something there on the floor. So taking this piece and making it all work out. So
having that open customization, has there been some industries that have come in besides agriculture, or really just the industrial industry as a whole? So there's been some other industries that have adopted some Banjo products?
There is as a whole. We're used a lot throughout the industrial markets in different type applications. I've even had requests, you know, for some stuff, even potentially for data centers, even, you know, kind of all kinds of industries out there. You know, if you're moving fluid, you know, there's a good chance we have something that'll work for your setup. So it just depends on the application and what their needs are and what they want, what they're looking for. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we get into the de-icing market as well, because essentially it's just a sprayer for the road, you know, so it's just a lot.
mm-hmm.
Obviously we don't have 120-foot booms, but, you know, they're doing a lot of the same thing. They just have to stay within, you know, a certain size road, you know, they have to, you know, has to be able to slide in the back of the truck. So we're pretty big in that market as well. And then the IBC market, you know, those 275-gallon totes, you know, we have valves for those guys. You know how many of those things are around the world. So yeah, we're ag's always been our bread and butter, and that's where we started. That's where our heart's at. But we'll work with anybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll say that, going back to the DryMate, over the years, we've had several different chemical processing plants that have adopted the DryMates, and we've had big sales into when they're doing plant construction, where they've chosen to adopt it for part of their systems as well. So we've also had DryMates installed in, there's a plant just north of an automotive plant, injection molding plant, that's using DryMates on their cooling lines for their mold bases. They have big molds and allows them to disconnect without the water running all over the place. And so, again, anywhere that you want to prevent spillage of fluid is a good place for a DryMate. And obviously, having both the stainless steel versions and the polypropylene versions give you a wide range of chemical and also temperature ranges.
So you mentioned de-icing and data centers and things like that. That made me think of temperature control. Is that something that you guys integrate into some of your products? Temperature regulation or handling hot or cold temperatures?
Go ahead, Aaron.
What our products are rated for, or
just being able to handle extremely hot or extremely cold. If you use it for de-icing, you're shooting antifreeze, but say it's -20 in some random scenario and you don't want that to freeze. What's kind of the idea to keep it from doing that? Or say you're handling something that's really, really hot that's flowing through, is that, you have to use different processes and materials.
Yeah, so we'll go to hot first. So on our propylene products, about 150 degrees Fahrenheit is our typical max temperature. We have looked at some specialty applications and rated some things a little bit higher based on the specific applications, but basically rule of thumb is 150 degrees is the max for our polypropylene fittings. To get hotter, you have to move into, at least with the Banjo products, into the stainless steel fittings, which of course we're limited. We do a few valves, we do the DryMates. Those get into warmer temperatures. I don't remember exact max, but I'll say upwards of maybe 300 degrees Fahrenheit. When you start talking cold, the propylene, well, both stainless and propylene work well in cold. The challenge, like you mentioned, is keeping them from freezing. And so our typical polypropylene parts, we rate to -20 F. And then we've, again, worked in some applications where it goes below that. When you start getting in those cold temperatures, not only are you concerned with the housing material, but you're also starting to get concerned with the seal material. So PTFE works well in the colder temperatures, but when you look at the elastomers, EPDM works much better at colder temperatures than what FKM does. So like in the de-icing applications, typically we shift into the EPDM to handle those colder temperatures on like the stem seals and the body O-rings. So those are things that you have to take into consideration when you start talking those temperatures either going down or up.
Absolutely. And is it rubber that you guys use for the seals, or am I thinking of something different?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're talking about, right? In the cam lever couplings, the seal there is a elastomer, typically EPDM. When you start talking about like the valves, the ball seats are typically PTFE. The stem seals are usually an elastomer, either EPDM or FKM. The body to end plate seal is typically an elastomer, EPDM or FKM. So those are your main seals. When you're talking about the DryMate product, there's a face seal. It's typically an elastomer. So again, you're either doing EPDM, FKM. We do offer some CalRes seals for some of those higher corrosive materials that need that. So there is some elastomer seals within our products.
Very neat. Okay. Well, that maybe the cold temperature made me think of that. Rubber gets brittle when it gets cold, and it's like, well, hopefully there's different materials that are able to be used to be able to combat some of the differences in what you're flowing and what what the weather's doing. We all know it's unpredictable. So, okay, so kind of wrapping things up, can either of you gentlemen kind of give me an idea of kind of what the future of Banjo looks like, what you guys are looking forward to, what you're planning, and just kind of next 2 3 year rundown?
Yeah, I'll kind of start out, from the kind of sales distribution side of things. You know, continuing to work with our distributors like Wylie, to make sure you guys have access to the products that you need for your customers. Making sure we have stock, we're delivering on time, and we're delivering the right products for what you guys need and what you're seeing out there in the market. So really, that's the biggest thing. We know there's been, there's always some changeover out there in the industry. Guys retire, and there takes a lot of knowledge with them. So we're developing a training platform for our distributors, for those newer employees to kind of help bring them up to speed. Just like I've had to get up to speed. So, that's something we're continuing to build out and work on as well. So we not only have the right products, but we have the right people with the right knowledge out there to help you out also. But we have a full team here at Banjo. Jason, is on kind of that tech sales side of things. So, when there's something I don't know, he's one of the guys I turn to. And I know a lot of guys on the Wylie team and other distributors as well, when they run across something that, maybe new to them or they're unfamiliar with, or, they haven't seen before or whatever, they can reach out and, we'll work with you guys and we'll figure it out. So, from the sales side of things and distribution, that's kind of our focus, making sure we have the right products, in the right places at the right time, and, the right knowledge out there. So.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, the thing that I'm looking forward to over the next few years is, we talked a little earlier about the new products coming out. We've got one project that's we're really excited about. It's a big project, a lot of resources going into it. Again, can't tell you what it is at this point, but we're excited about that. We're excited about the long couplings and that family of products that we're bringing out that will be able to help move liquids more efficiently, give farmers and people more opportunity to have plumbed systems easier and be able to put together more efficient systems to just help with those flows and be able to just do better farming, right? So we're looking forward to that. We're also, Banjo continues to invest in the factory and in the resources. So that's exciting to see as we continue to invest in our manufacturing capabilities. There's several projects going on there as well. Just revitalizing tooling, of course, adding new tooling for the new products, new injection molding machines, new assembly lines, new testing. We just did a massive upgrade on our engineering testing lab that Jake was talking about earlier. Just putting in more capacity and capability in the lab to be able to do more testing and do it faster and better. So hoping to be able to get more data out, like for flow curves and things for different products to be able to pick the right product for the need.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with the OEMs. I deal a lot with the OEMs on my side. Got a lot of neat and interesting stuff coming out with them. Of course, they're always thinking 2-3 years down the road, so you might not see this stuff for a couple of years, but eventually it trickles down to distribution, and the guys actually use it out in the field. So it's pretty neat knowing what we got coming, and that eventually you guys will have access to it as well. So I just looking forward to that. There's a lot of neat stuff coming.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate all of you guys coming and taking the time to talk with me today. I've certainly learned a lot. I'd like to just open the floor if there's anything else any of you'd like to add.
I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I know podcasts are kind of growing, and it's the first one I've ever done, so if I look a little silly on here, I apologize, but it was a good experience, and I know I looked at some of your other ones and see you guys get pretty good hits on it. So appreciate the opportunity that you let us come on and do it as well.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys coming.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that as well. Thank you, Ethan, for inviting us to join you. Always enjoy talking about Banjo products. We've been at it for a long time, and obviously we've been at it a long time because we enjoy it. We enjoy the market. We enjoy the customers. Enjoy working with people such as yourself. I think it's a great market and to be a part of. So appreciate it and thank you.
Absolutely.
Agree. So kind of a ditto to what both of those guys said. And I really enjoy working with the Wylie team. They always have good feedback for me. And I feel like I learned something myself from every store I go into. So thanks for letting us come on here, and we look forward to continuing to provide the highest quality products out there to the market. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys, and I appreciate you joining me.